Hi, this is Jacob Nash with JNGL, and today we're looking at Unit 4 review. And I have to have a flat cap on today because of how cold it is. Okay, arrow key's not working? Alright, I'll click then. So there's five standards that were in this unit, and two of them are only for honors, so you might not have to know all this video. But the first one was just a trigonometry basics. I didn't have the ratios on here, but you can go back to Unit 4, Lesson 1 if you need review on that. But something we didn't know was SOHCAHTOA, which was just telling you that to find sine, it's opposite over hypotenuse, cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent was opposite over adjacent. And if you're solving for a side, and you can tell it's a side because x is over here on the side, you know that sine because this is the opposite and this is the hypotenuse, and opposite hypotenuse, that means we use sine, and we plug in the reference angle, and then we set it equal to the two things we know, and we do 12 over x because O over h. So that's how you would set that up. And then you would, when x is on the bottom, you have to divide the numerator by the sine of the angle. And then that's approximately 18.3. And we usually round to 10 tenths when you're doing trigonometry. But if you're solving for an angle, you see the x is an angle this time. We find out that it's tangent because this is opposite and this is adjacent. And we do 19 over 2 because it is opposite over adjacent. And then we have to use the inverse function, which is tan to the negative first. And you multiply that by 19 over 2, and that is about 84 degrees for this measure. For standard 4.2, it is angle of elevation and depression. And I have some pictures to show what that might be. This is the Space Needle that's in Seattle, and if you're looking up at it, the sight that you see is the line of sight, and that would make angle of elevation. And then looking down from the Eiffel Tower in this picture, that's the angle of depression. If you think elevation like elevation of Mount. I don't know any mounts, really. I think there's one called like Mount Flat, and you might say, oh, that's 3,250 feet tall. Well, think tall, like you're looking up at it. And then depression, well, when you're like depressed, you're kind of down in the dumps, so you can think down. And both of these, you always are forming these by the diagonal lines, which are basically just a hypotenuse, or would you say hypotenuse? I don't know. But always horizontal lines, never the vertical ones, because that can be confusing. For the angle of elevation, it would be this. It forms with the diagonal line and the horizontal line. And then for angle of depression, horizontal line, diagonal line, down. And sometimes people might have a square problem, and they would think that this angle right here is the angle of depression. But no, because that's forming with a vertical line. That wouldn't work. Alright, 4.3, this is honor standard, so if you're CP, you can hit that L button, and it will skip. So the law of sines just states that if you take the sine of an angle and you divide it by the opposite side, all of those will be equal for any combination that you do. And that's easier to be shown than said, because it might be kind of confusing really when you just look at a formula. But you'll usually use this if there's an acute triangle. So if you see this and you're like, okay, what am I trying to do? Am I trying to solve for tangent or what? Or a ratio? No, you're just gonna That only works when it's a right triangle. So anyways, example is you always start out with something over something equals something else over something else. Like this. And those somethings, they always have the signs of angles on the tops. So you can put in the two angles that you know in for those. Unless there's only, well, if it's x, you can put in x. You might have to solve for an angle, but in this case, you have to solve for side. On the bottom, you put the side lengths that are opposite to it. So opposite to this 31 is the x, opposite to this 19 is 5. And then you cross multiply, as you can see. And then when you want to get x by itself, you try to get rid of everything else. So what we do is we divide by the sine over 19, and you find out that that's approximately 7.9. All right. Standard 4.4, also honors standard, is law of cosines. This one's a little harder, just because that the formula is kind of tricky, and you have to know your order of operations to be able to do this. You always multiply before you add or subtract. So the thing about this formula is that you can change up the letters A, B, C. And I think that when I actually did a video on this, I made it something else. Like I made it like side and angle instead of A, B, C. Well, this is just a different way of saying it, but it really means the same thing. So you can see this picture, it's in reference to that. So lowercase letters will represent sides and uppercase will represent angles. So A squared, how you will know if you're using A, B, or C depends on which thing you're given. And then B, we have B equals B squared plus C squared minus 2 times B times C times the cosine of angle A, not side A. That's important to know. So example, well, if we were just put these things here, we can find out that this would be our A. So we're going to solve for A in this case. So we can just plug in what we know. Yes, okay. We plug in, for A, you put in X, and for B is 17. We can see B, we put it down there, C is 14, and the blue is what we plugged in. And then the 22 is that reference angle, which happens to be the uppercase A. Then after that, we need to just simplify some things and solve for each thing that we know. So that turns into 485, that turns into negative 476, and that turns into 0.9 simplified. Now we actually have to multiply this, not 485 minus 476, because if you did that, that would be not in order of operations. You need to multiply. And so you get negative 428.4, and then you can solve that, and you get 56.6. You take the square root of that, because you want to get x by itself, and that turns into x equals 7.5, approximately. And then the last standard that there is special right triangles, and this is already what I did on the last video. And the different kinds are 45, 45, 90, and 30, 60, 90. So when you have this one, the T's will be the two sides that are across from the 45 angles, or the ones that make up the right angle. And then the hypotenuse is going to be T root 2. And then for these, across from the 30 is the M, across from the 60 is the M root 3, across from the 2M is 90. Okay? Well, that's all there is for that. If you really need a specific example, you can just go to videos I've done. So, suggestions. Well, first of all, I did mention that I would say what my email is, because you might have questions, and you can email me through jacobnash747@gmail.com. I will answer, hopefully. And unless you're watching this like 5 years later, then I probably won't even care, really. So sorry about that. If you're watching in 2020, good. If you're watching like 2030, sorry, you're out of luck. I'll be an adult then, and I don't think I'm going to really care about this. Anyways, if you don't understand, watch previous videos, like in this picture. Watch other people's videos. There's organic chemistry tutor. it's a lot longer videos and goes into more depth. And then ask your teacher. Unless you have a bad teacher, they should answer you. So, yes, I went fast, but I definitely go into more depth on other videos. So thank you for watching, and good luck on a test if you have one.